turn to Israel now. Over 1 million Palestinian civilians taking shelter in the southern Gazan city of Rafah are preparing for Israel's latest offensive.
Now, this comes amid understandably growing international pressure on Benjamin Netanyahu to exercise restraint.
Foreign editor at Jewish News UK, Jotam Confino, joins us now. Jotam, thank you so much for your time. What are we hearing about Netanyahu's planned ground offensive now in Rafah?
Well, we know that the military has been instructed to come up with a plan to evacuate these civilians. We know that the United States is pressuring Israel to wait with this operation until all civilians have been removed from Rafah. Now, that's unlikely to happen. It's 1.3 million people, and to assume that all of them can be evacuated to safe places, I think, is delusional. So really what we're looking at is a looming military operation that will likely happen in a couple of weeks. And once it happens, we will see more civilian casualties because Rafah is one of the places where Hamas is still present. They still have 4 battalions in Rafah, which means around 4,000 terrorists who are hiding in both civilian areas, but also in tunnels. So this is just another area which will likely be really wrecked because of this clash between Hamas and Israel.
Can you just remind us, for anyone who isn't aware of, the geography of this, Rafah, I bet it's about 1.4 million people fled there because they were told this is safe.
Yeah, it was relatively safe up until now, but anyone who looks at a map of Gaza can see that it's a relatively small area. Rafah is the southernmost part of Gaza. It borders Egypt. And now they have to move to the areas where Israel is no longer fighting Hamas, which is primarily northern Gaza. But northern Gaza is destroyed in many ways. Most of the homes have been destroyed or damaged. So it's very, very difficult to navigate inside this relatively small enclave. Now, the ideal option, which very few people are talking about, would be to get these people to the other side of the border, to remove them into Egypt. Egypt's area, the Sinai Desert, is huge, and you could easily make a buffer zone in there where they could seek shelter. There are countries lining up to help the Palestinians. I have never seen more countries or international organizations lining up to help a certain people in a crisis, other than maybe Ukraine. So this is something that I think is really lacking in this whole discussion. That the best solution would be to get them into safety in Egypt for a while.
Yes,
of course, it's not ideal.
I couldn't agree with you more, and it's great to have you on. But you and I both know that's not going to happen. The Egyptians will not have and I'm with you. I think the condemnation from the world that is growing is quite right. The problem is, you said when you started saying that I think there are 4 battalions left of Hamas. That the intricacies, we've said it every day. What happened on October the 7th? They had a right to do something about that. But within this such a small area, trying to find these terrorist cells is proving militarily impossible. And now, as we've reported, America, their biggest ally, is saying, hold on. But my concern, and I said it last hour, is you have a man who, without this war, is politically dead anyway, I think, to be fair. We all started talking about a 2-state solution. He's now poo-pooed that. And one wonders whether Netanyahu is on a road to nowhere because he's nothing to lose. And I know that's a particularly poor way of describing it, but that's sitting here how I sort of feel.
Yeah, absolutely. That's what people in Israel feel. Most people would like to see Netanyahu gone yesterday, but he's not going anywhere. He's politically savvy. He's cynical. He doesn't really care. He's going to stay in power as long as possible. I think really what we have to remember here is that this looming invasion of Rafah is due to 2 reasons. First of all, there are still 134 hostages now held in Gaza, 50 of whom are presumed dead. But there are several of them who are in Rafah. We know that for a fact. And there are several of these hostages who are extremely vulnerable, and in particular the young women who we know are being sexually assaulted. We know that from the hostages who were released in the last ceasefire deal. So Israel will not stop its military operations anywhere in Gaza until these hostages are either released in a ceasefire deal or they're being rescued in a military operation. So if the world wants this disaster, this awaiting disaster in Rafah to be avoided, they should look to Hamas. Hamas has the keys to avoid all of this. If they release the hostages and if they give up, because it's inevitable, they will be destroyed militarily. Ideologically, Hamas will survive, but militarily, they will be more or less destroyed in Gaza.
Also, if Israel take this strategy that isn't the diplomatic negotiations, it's the military intervention to try to secure the release of more hostages, they run the risk, as has happened before, of killing Israeli hostages in the process.
Absolutely. This is also a different point that we also fail to remember. Israel would ideally like to see all of these hostages released in a deal. The military operation is super risky, and the government might say that this is the best option and this is the only way to get them out, but facts prove them wrong. As we say, 50 hostages are presumed dead. Some of them were killed in rescue operations. Some of them were even killed in friendly fire. Some of them have been killed in Israeli airstrikes. So this is not a good solution for Israel, to go in and risk not only the lives of the hostages, but also the lives of the soldiers. But as long as Hamas is not willing to compromise on anything, as they're not really ready to do now, this is what's going to happen. It will be a military operation. The only question is, when is it going to happen in Rafah?
Yotam, thank you. Yotam Kofino from Jewish News, updating us on that story, that rolling story in Rafah in southern Gaza, keeping you updated throughout the show and, of course, throughout the day here on talkTV.